I don't even know. There's so much stuff going through my head. I don't even know where to start. You know, let me start here. I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go to the old favorite. We're going to go to Deuteronomy. I think this best fits what I want to talk about today. And then from there we're going to go to Deuteronomy 28. So I'm going to start here. It says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you." So for those of you that haven't been in crime, both of you that haven't been in crime, the first thing you understand when you've been a criminal or you've done bad things, even here, guys run around when they're in trouble to try to get people to make their stories and get their stories right. You know, when you're doing things wrong, the last thing you want to hear is there's witnesses. You know? I'll never forget, there's a joke, guy sitting at home, the door, here's a knock on the door, opens the door, there's two Jehovah's Witnesses standing at the door. And turns out that the guy is a mafia guy. And I said, "We're Jehovah's Witnesses," and he drops the two Jehovah's Witnesses, puts them down. And he says, "Listen here, we don't want no witnesses. We don't want no witnesses." But so you understand that, like, witnesses are a problem. You know, if you're doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, witnesses will put you in prison. So here God is saying that He's calling the entire heavens, everything in the heavens, and He's calling everything on the earth as witnesses. So I don't know how many bullets you got, but that's a lot of witnesses. You know, Jesus says later, He says, when you go into a town and you want to give witness to the town and the town will not receive you, walk away from that town and dust your shoes off, for even the dust will bear witness against that town. Dust will be called as witnesses. Imagine, we call to the stand the dust, and the dust arrives and says, "Okay, I remember this guy," and gives evidence against you. The dust there where you were in that crack house. Remember there, you were in that crack house doing the things you're doing there. There's dust there. But I know, I've been in crack houses. They call that dust. And the dust comes and says, "Oh yeah, no, I remember this. This and this day he came there and he was doing this and this." Imagine. In front of the entire world. Everything that you've done. You know, they're in the toilet when you're quiet with your iPhone and you start looking up certain websites. There's dust there, but that's part of the earth realm. And God says, "I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you." Right? "That I've set before you life and death." Life being blessings and death being curses. You've got a choice to make, bro. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. So that you and your children may live. And that you may love the Lord your God, a commandment, listen to His voice and hold fast to Him. For the Lord is your life. And He will give you many years in the land He swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So in terms of that choice, how are you doing so far? You know, what have you chosen? Are you choosing life or are you choosing death? Are you choosing God or are you choosing the ways of the world? That's pretty much what it boils down to, you know? And how is choosing the ways of the world working for you, bro? You know? I know you like to walk around here pretending you're something fantastic. You know what, it's something that I saw again last week in this place. You know? Because what you don't know is that I get reports on everything that goes on here. Every single day. You know? You think you're talking to little Johnny Rottencrotch over here. Meanwhile, there's two oaks listening to what you have to say. They speak to someone, they speak to someone. That someone eventually comes to the ear of the staff or the senior residents, and that, when I ask about that person, they don't come and run and tattle. I just say, hey, how's it going with X? And they'll go, well, this. You know? And you need to start understanding that I understand what your mindset is, but, you know, I don't understand. Something I don't understand, all right, is how you can behave the way you behave, okay? Okay? You get caught for behaving the way you behave, okay? Because everyone can see what you're doing. Everyone, but if you're lucky to enough to still be employed, your people at work can see what's going on. The second you speak to anyone in your family who's been dealing with you and this issue for years and years and years, they can see what's going on. When you come here, we can see what's going on. We'll understand what's going on. And then you'll stand here and go, no, that's not what's going on. You know, I want to talk to you about a drug test. You know these drug tests that we got here, okay? There's a prosecutor out in the West Rand, all right? They started a program in the West Rand. I don't know if it's still going. But probably they ran out of steam. They just got tired of fighting for people's lives. That's probably the bottom line, if it did steam out. They got tired of fighting with you. They got tired of fighting with you to save your life after you put it in the toilet. But there was a program. And what they did was this. They gave an instruction to the cops. I think it was in Florida, in the West Rand, Florida, Roodepoort area. And they said to the cops, if you bump someone on the street, all right, and you search them, and in your mind that person looks like they're high, but you can't find drugs on them, right? You take them to the police station, you drug test them, all right, and you charge them with possession, if they're positive. You charge them with possession of drugs if they're positive. And then they must come to prove to the court why there's methamphetamine, cocaine, and opioids in their body. And if they can't come with a proper defense, then we're going to charge them with possession and we're going to convict them of possession. Or we're going to put the charges to them in front of the court and he's going to say, you're in possession of drugs. You can either fight us for the possession case or the state will help you go to rehab. But there's an issue with that. Because the state rehabs are closing down left, right, and center. There's not enough people. And this is what I want to say to the camera. You know, the camera, you can't see what's going on around me. This place is full. Full. The sober living place, full. The other rehab down the road here, full. The other rehab that way down the road, full. The other sober living place down the road, full. The government rehabs, full. Most of the rehabs that are worth their salt, full. Now, why is that? Because people don't want to choose life. People want to choose things that they know. They've been taught over and over again are bad for them. But it's the easy life, you see, they think. They think it's the easy life. You know, I look at the way guys come in here and the way they've been living. And in their minds, they still think that that's the way to go. You know? You drive past, we've got a massive hardware place here, all around us, and we've got car places and all of that. But you go to these places and you see what these guys have built. You know? I don't want to now punt specific businesses, all right? But you look at businesses like down here, Pristine Motors. And across the road here, Fred's Hardware. Okay? These are multi-generational businesses that have been started. Pristine Motors, I believe, started in like the 40s, 1940s or 50s. Started as a little corner car dealership. Have you seen what that place looks like? It is massive, but I think they own about 20 acres of land there. They've got workshops, they've got offices, they've got car stands. They've got all of that. Now you drive past that and you think to yourself, well, I want that, as you sit in your taxi on the way to the dealer in Vereeniging. And you think to yourself, how am I going to achieve that? No, I'm going to achieve that by crime. And I'm going to achieve that by taking drugs. And I'm going to achieve that by living the easy life. I want you to explain to me how you're going to do that. I want you to explain to me how you're going to pull that off. You know, you can say what you want about those people, but I'll tell you this. They're not of the same faith as us. But if you go there on a Friday afternoon, you won't find them there. You won't find them there, bro. You know where they are? They're at mosque, but they're at mosque and they're praying. And they're spending time with their spiritual community. Now, do I per se agree with their religion? No, I don't. But I want to say this to you. What it does show is it shows some kind of commitment to something greater than themselves. When you go there during their fasting and all of that stuff, they're busy with that. We all know what they do. Because when we go to their places of business, sometimes you can't reach them because they're busy with their spiritual life. You put no effort into your spiritual life whatsoever. And when they're not busy with their spiritual life, where are they? They're at work. And when they're not at work and they're not busy with their spiritual life, where are they? With their families. I'll never ever forget, as all of you know, I ride off-road motorcycles. That's my second to God in this recovery center. That is my passion. But when was this? 2006, 2007. I meet a Muslim guy at a ride. And he arrives there in his full Muslim religious dress. And I'm like, how's this guy going to ride like that? And he's got a long beard down to here. Anyway, he gets changed into off-road gear. Obviously, he can't take his beard on. Now he's riding dirt bikes, and this beard is just getting dirtier and blowing out the side. But after the ride, or during the ride, I get to talk to this guy. I'll never forget, because there was a guy who made a joke. Because the guy running the ride was a guy by the name of Steve Lauter. His nickname was Tombstone. Okay? Because of the way he rides, right? And unfortunately, he's now passed away because of COVID. He's the guy that put together the thing that got me into rehab that led to this center. All right? Him and my wife, along with the entire dirt bike community. But we were sitting somewhere, either in the bush or in the parking lot. And it was myself, Steve Lauter, who's an Orthodox Jew. All right? I'm a Christian. Right? And at that point, I was already trying to be a pastor. Right? So it must have been about 2009, after I came out of rehab the last time. Right? And yes, it's Urshad was his name. Urshad, with his long beard. And this guy named Thomas Culpepper pulled up on his dirt bike, and he looked at us like this, the three of us sitting there on the rock, and he said to us, "Did you hear the joke about the pastor, the Muslim, and the Jew?" And everyone burst out laughing, right? Because of this thing. But Urshad told me a story. And I've told this story before. He said this. He said, "You know that I've had all the TVs taken out of my house." I said, "Okay, this looks one of these radical Al-Qaeda type oaks, but must be." You know what I mean? I said, and I asked him straight, "Are you like Al-Qaeda or ISIS or something like that?" He says, No. He says, "I'm a father." I said, "What the hell is this guy on about?" He says, "Let me tell you what happened." He says, "I went to visit a family member here in Joburg. All right? And I came into the house, and I was standing talking to the men. And the lady of the house was sitting on a couch. And her little girl, maybe 3 years old, was going, "Mommy," and she was going, "Hey, stop it, man. Can't you see I'm watching Seven Line?" She says, "But Mommy, I want to talk to you." "Hey, man, I'm busy. It's my TV show." "Yeah, but Mommy, hey, yo. When this is finished, I'll talk to you." He said, and he looked at that, and he said something clicked in his head. Because he just had a little boy, was still in nappies. And he said, something clicked in my head. He says, "You know that? Those minutes that little girl wanted to spend with that mom, that she was more interested in Sevenderland, she'll never get those minutes back again. You don't know what's going to happen in those couple of minutes that will be life-changing for that child, or that you'll never be able to experience again because you were more interested in Sevenderland." He says he went home from there, took his TVs off the wall. He had one in almost every room. Took all the TVs off the wall. His wife said, "What are you doing?" He explained the situation to her. She said, "You know what, I'm in agreement with you." They took the TVs out of the house, went to the pawn shop or sold them to family or whatever he did with the TVs. He says, "Now I go to Graft, and when I come home from Graft, I don't watch TV. I play with my child, and I spend time with my son, and I spend time teaching my son to be a man and what is required of him. And I give him all the attention he needs, instead of putting all my attention into people that I don't even know, I will never meet, and I have no idea, but I know that of influencing me negatively and of pumping junk into my mind and pumping junk into my son's mind. And most importantly, the more important than all of that is that it's separating my time with my son." And let me tell you something, bro. It was like someone hit me with a wet fish. I had an epiphany sitting there. And I thought to myself, maybe this is why that religion is growing and ours is shrinking. Maybe that's the exact reason. Maybe it's not really about, in terms of your mindset, what God you serve, but it's more about how that God influences you in the way that you behave and treat your family and hang around with your family. Because how do you build a strong family if A, you're not there, and B, when you are there, you're more interested in what's going on the television? He had a very valid point. So for him, it's his belief, it's his family, and then it's his work to support that family. Those are the three things he chooses. But number one, he chooses God. Now we have the Christian faith, and I'm proud to say that we are 100%, without any doubt, serving the right and the one and only God of this universe. We have an advantage in the game. Now you'll say to me, how can I say that? Because I watched old Ricky Gervais the other day again on one of those podcasts. He says, you people believe. He said, I'm an atheist. It's not that I don't believe just in your God. I don't believe in any gods. And atheism, he says, is not a religion. It's just the fact that we don't believe in any type of supernatural, unseen entity somewhere that has some kind of influence in our lives. He says, so you don't believe in 2,999 of the 3,000 religions that are available and gods that are available. I just don't believe in one more than you. Right? Which is fine. That's his prerogative. That's what he chooses. And if you look in terms of human success, he's a very successful guy. Now, how does he pull that off? Well, I don't know. That's him. But me, as a recovering addict, I can tell you now that I can't take a step without God. Because chances are, without this book of rules and laws, without the fact that I understand that I've got forgiveness through Jesus Christ, okay, I don't know how I would live. Because for many of us here, we grew up in homes where we were never taught how to live. We were never taught the fundamentals of life. We were never taught what it means to be a man. You know? If I say to the majority of guys here, because I looked straight at JP and I know that he's had this benefit in his life and he's still made the wrong choices. But if I look at most of the guys I come across in this place, okay, the vast majority overall, okay, how many of them, and I steal this concept from another preacher called Johnny Lowe. He asked this question, okay, in an Afrikaans sermon. And it really cottoned on to me. How many of the men that are on drugs, that are living their lives in this manner, that we live our lives, all right? At some point when you were a small child, okay, when I say small, you are old enough to understand, maybe 9 or 10 years old, okay? Your father gripped you because he was there, eh? So let's start there. You know, your fathers were there, all right? That's always a positive, okay? Even if your father is a little bit of a dodgy fellow, okay, being there is at least one positive. But more importantly than that, okay, is this. He then took you at some point in your life on a trip, put you in his car, put you in his bakkie, rented a caravan, whatever the case may be, got a tent, took you out somewhere to a river, into the bush, okay? Sat you down, you oaks did what you did there, fished, or you hunted, or whatever it was that you did, whatever the activity was that you were engaged in. Maybe if it was someone like me, took you to the motocross, took you to the roof of Africa, to go watch the enduro, whatever it is. Some activity, boys' activity, right? Sat you down there after a day out. You're sitting around the fireplace. We South Africans, we all understand fireplace. We all understand shisanyama. Right? Put some meat on the grill. And he sat down and he said to you, right, boy, today, I'm going to teach you, and I want you to listen to me, what is required, and what the rules, and what the responsibilities, and what the duties are of a man. And he laid them out for you there. And he said to you, you're old enough now, and I expect you to conduct yourself in that manner. Priority for a man. Number 1, respect your mother and father. Honor them. Now I want to ask you, bro. Now this is outside of the whole God and faith thing, right? Do you check out? I'm more interested in the gate. You want to go find out what's going on there? Hop up and go ask, what? It's not for you. It's not for you, bro. If someone's leaving, if someone's coming, neither of those are you. So don't worry. You know you're not coming because you're here. You've already come. And you know you're not going because we haven't told you that you're going. It's not the ice cream man. And it's not Ark. Or Skumbutsu. We had a like that in a prison cell. Skumbutsu. We used to call him Scumbucket. Because he was a scumbucket. Honor your father and mother. So how honorable do you think it is for your father and mother to go and tell people that their son is now in rehab because he's a drug addict? How are you doing in that area, do you think, of manhood? Huh? Do you think this is a positive? You know, I've got guys sitting here that are living in their parents' houses and they're old men already. That are violent with their parents, that are abusive to their parents, that are reliant on their parents for employment, that are reliant on their parents for transport and money. still now. And then being reliant like that, still have the audacity to abuse and brutalize and sometimes even violently assault their own mothers and fathers and grandparents. They're sitting here among us. And then they walk around here with absolutely zero conscience on that. In fact, when they're not trying to deny it, they're trying to justify it. And that's a number one of being a man. Before you even get to the whole marriage and children and all of that, number one, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. For God is one. Number two, honor your father and mother. Do you know why that is? Why is that? Do you know? Because you weren't always big and hairy and ugly. Yeah? Huh? Because when you were little and you used to make a poo-poo in your nappy and you used to scream your little head off, somebody had to come and change that nappy and wipe your body. And when you were hungry and you opened your mouth and started screaming you want something to eat, somebody had to bring a bottle for you or give you a breast. Check Naz, he heard breast, he's already excited. You think I didn't see that? I saw that. Good. I'm just excited that at least you're excited about breast and not other things. But someone had to feed you. When you were cold at night or in winter, someone had to put clothes on you and cover you with a blanket. And that is your parents. You didn't get where you are now by yourself, bro. Then you had to get an education. And you had to go to school. And you needed school uniforms. Right, many of you, as you sit here now, some of you are already going grey. Your parents are still fulfilling that role. That should have already ended 15 years ago. And then we hear the way you speak to them on the phone. You're dishonoring them with your behavior, first of all. Just by virtue of the fact that you've had to go to a place like this. Because what you're telling the world is that your mother and father didn't raise you right. That's what you're telling the whole world. Because whether you like it or not, I know we've got all this liberal thinking. Oh, you know, it's not the parents. But then when you guys sit in front of the counselor, then they tell you that it's your parents. You know that. Now I'm telling you it's not your parents. In most cases. In some cases, I've had guys here, I don't know if the guys here are like that, where their dad, when they turned 16, I had a guy here, took them to the strip club and gave them their first lines of cocaine and said, right, now I'm going to show you how to be a man. That whole conversation I just had, but their way was strip club, cocaine and dope. And the guy then ended up in rehab 10 years later, at the age of 26. Then his father has the audacity to come and say to me, I have no idea how this happened. Now you have those cases. You know? Johnny Lowe tells her, not Johnny Lowe, at one of Johnny Lowe's men camps, there was a guy there and I don't remember his name. But also a guy from Namakwaland. You know Namakwaland? He was out and out. This is his testimony. Alcoholic. Out and out. And he used to drink from morning to night. You wake up in the morning with a black label. 2 Comprals and a black label. What? That was his morning. That was his breakfast. And then he come home and he dope. And he says one day he was sitting there and he was a bit drunk. And he checked his Lati, who was 3 years old. Maybe even still younger. He was still in nappies. Could just barely walk. come from the kitchen carrying a black label coat. And he says, it changed him in an instant. He says, because he realized that even though his son didn't realize, and I'll put it for you in Afrikaans. If you don't understand Afrikaans, then find out later. He says, and I saw him coming with a coat, and I was shocked because I just finished. So my son had observed that I just finished. He's 2 or 3. And he came from the kitchen with a coat, and he realized that his son was doing this nie omdat hy weet wat is 'n bier nie, maar hy weet my pa like die koeldrank kwaai. En ek wil my pa bly maak. He says he stopped drinking on the spot. That's 2 guys now. One a Muslim, one a Christian, born again, who had this epiphany of God through their child. He says, because he started thinking, what am I teaching this 2-year-old? But if this is what this 2-year-old thinks makes me happy, and this is how he grows into life, thinking that this brown bottle is what makes people happy, then what am I teaching him? And at that point, when he gave his testimony, he'd been clean, 14 or 15 years already. But that was the change. Because the Bible also teaches us in the New Testament, fathers, do not exasperate your children. But we'll get into that another day. Honor your father and mother. Love the Lord your God and serve him with your whole heart. Right? And look after your family. Okay? You know? If you look at that story in terms of your kids, some of you have got kids here. Right? What do you think people are telling your kids, where are you now? Are you now forcing your mother and father through your behaviors to lie to your children? To protect them from the knowledge of what their father is? Now my question to you is, if that is happening, which it is happening, how do you then in good conscience walk around here and pretend that you're something so great? This is what baffles me with you guys. You know? And it's something that was brought to my attention in my own personal life, in rehab, by a hardcore pastor. And I was cross with that oak for years because of what he said there. But as I developed in my recovery and I became a man, I realized that what he said there, because it had made me so angry, it had helped me work towards changing what I was and who I was. Because what had happened, I've told you guys the story before, all right, is that I got to a place where I'd been caught for doing something stupid in rehab. I don't know what I did. It wasn't a major thing. But it was something that caused me to lose my leadership position. And because of my ego, and because of who I pretend I am all the time when I'm there, and everywhere else that I used to go, this demotion was too much for me to handle. And so I said, I'm leaving here. And I'm going back to, I don't care. But you hear that word? I don't need to put up with this crap of this pastor and this place. No one's ever heard that before, yeah? So he calls me in, as some of you get called in. Now I think I'm going because I'm not going to get a solid and stern rebuke. And I don't really care what he's got to say because I'm ducking. I don't know who this oak thinks he is. He doesn't know me, but now that I'm in his position, I realize he doesn't think he's anything. He's just transporting truth through the power of the Holy Spirit into someone's heart. And you know how you know when it's truth? Hey? How do you know? That's it. It's painful, but especially, remember we spoke about it last week, when people start talking ultimate truth and objective truth, not your subjective truth. When people start giving you objective and ultimate truth in your life, guaranteed, it's going to flip and hit hard. Sometimes there's ultimate truth that comes your way, and objective truth that's actually quite pleasing to you. Because it's something you may have thought about yourself for years, but were too scared to say. And then someone will come to you and say, you know what, brother? You've got this one character trait that is really such a positive, and da-da-da-da-da, and they give it to you, and you're like, oh, wow. You know, I always thought that about myself, but I was maybe too scared to expose it or whatever. And it actually makes you feel uplifted and good, right? But most of the time, in this situation, when truth gets spoken to a person, you hear the bags packing there from my room, from my office. And then go back to the curse. Run back to the curse. Don't want to hear truth. Don't want to choose life. Don't want to walk on the way. So where do we go? We move back to the curse. Right? The other part here, the curse. And I'm going to give you some of the curses. And I'm going to give you an example that happened this weekend of someone who wants to live in the curse. Of those videos you sent me. Of someone that was here. Which worries me that people are friends with this individual on Facebook to the point that they can download his videos. But maybe they'll change their ways. Hey, welcome back, bro. Does everyone think you relapsed?
Yeah.
Is that what they think?
No, I think that was when I came back, everyone was a bit worried. But,
We're not worried. Who cares what they think? What? That's going to be an interesting conversation. Maybe you must come and speak it on camera sometime this week. Just move your head so I can see Josh. Yeah, maybe you must come and tell your story here on camera for us. Because the decision you've just made, right, makes no sense to anybody here. It does to me. Please understand that. I get it. But for the vast majority of oaks here, okay, you know what's happened to this oak, right? He left here, right? Back to his original job, okay? Sorry, I'm going to say this on camera, okay? All right. His boss phoned me, not me. When I say me, my wife and I are me, okay? And said, he is so happy to have this oak back at work. All right? Because on his own, he brings in at a minimum $500 a month for that company. Now, I don't know what commission structure this boy's on. But don't go there, because then the oaks are going to come and hit you for coming back. All right? But my friend worked for a gym organization as a sales consultant. And through that job, now I'm talking 1994, 95, 96, he was earning in excess for himself of 100 grand a month at the age of 19, 20, 21. With the money he earned from selling gym contracts, he bought BMWs, a townhouse, superbikes, whatever your heart could desire as a young man to have fun, right? Right? And then he moved from that into the insurance game, and he did even better there. And then from there he went into real estate, and then he did even better there. a very wealthy guy now, right? Doesn't even live in this country anymore. He was going to be earning money that many of me, myself, probably will only dream of. Okay? And then out of the blue, he finds us, this gent, and he says, I don't want to do this. I'm coming back. To earn nothing financially. Now, you got to ask yourself, what is wrong with this guy? You know? Pastor Dave must be running a cult. He's captured his mind. Let me tell you why it's not a cult. Because he's free to do what he wishes. I counseled him here and I said, think nicely, because you might be there and see everything that's available and just not feel happy and not right. And maybe that's what happened. He'll tell his story, you know. But this is it. This is what sometimes, you know, choosing life doesn't always mean choosing the big salary, choosing the fast car, and choosing the supermodel. But, you know, who knows? Maybe a little bit down the road, he wants to go give it another bash and give it another try. You know, it's his indaba. He's got to. So the Bible says this: you must work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It's his decision. I'm just worried. Did you tell them you're coming back here? You better find that. Okay, he's been good to you, but.
Yeah, but it's the whole, what he did, he thinks it's his dominion now over me. So he uses it as a...
But still do the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't say those words. Just tune. Don't lie. But just say, you know, you would rather be doing this. Okay. So this is it. Where was I before I was so rudely interrupted by myself?
Don't want to hear the truth, follow the way.
Yeah, follow the way. Yeah, so let me just refine my train of thought. Yeah, okay, so now I'm going to talk about this other individual that was here on the program. Okay? And this is going to speak to many of you here. All right? Because of where we come from, most of us sitting here, we come from the street life, the thug life, the drug life, right? We think that by portraying an image of thuggery and toughness and gangsterism and all these types of things is going to gain us the respect of our peers in this place. Right? And so we put on this facade. I was telling you about what Pastor Sophus told me. So then he calls me in, right? We'll get back to this, because it's the same thing. That's how I was living there. You know, because of the connections I had on the street, because of who I was and who my friends were. The second I walked into that place, there was the Minions in Despicable Me, when they shoot actually not the Minions, over the hedge. Do you check over the hedge? Where all the little animals are sitting there, and then there's like this massive fireworks display. And they all go, ooh, all the little chipmunks and all of that, right? Yeah, I just must watch it. It's quite a laugh. Haven't you watched Over the Edge? Where the squirrel gets booked. The squirrel gets wasted on. Yeah, it slows down time because he gets onto a stimulant, you know. But anyway, so it's a laugh. Yeah, it's a funny movie. But anyway. So when I walked into that place, that's how it was. Like there were a bunch of people there because addiction was much smaller back in the day. So everyone knew everyone all around the country just about. And so when I walked in there, everybody's like, ooh, this oak is with those oaks. You know, not because I'm so great, but because of who they believed was standing behind me, right? Okay? And so I was like, that's fantastic. And I climbed onto that bandwagon, right? And I manipulated my way through that place like that. Also with my previous career in the police and what I was involved in the cops. Word quickly gets around. All right? And so I lived in this Christian mindset, but with a gangster attitude. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In other words, still pretending, still not completely surrendering to who I really was, who I really am. Okay? As a human being. Trying to keep up this facade of what I want people to think I am. And some of the things I've done in my life to keep up that facade could have put me in jail for a very long time. Potentially, right? So you must always remember that there's always that risk, okay? Now I get demoted, right? And I get called in. And the pastor starts giving me my truths. Starts giving me my truths about who I am, actually. And I break down crying. Now, when I left there, I told everyone back at the center, I started crying because I was so mild. But that's not the truth. The truth is that I started crying because he completely dissected my character into portions of truth that when he spoke them out to me were so painful and so true that I couldn't hold back the tears. Right? And eventually I said, well, now I'm definitely leaving. And he said, why? And I said, you know what? Because I'm not like all these other junkies here. And he said to me, you're right. And I was like relieved. And I stopped crying. He said, you're right. You got it. You're 100% right, Dave. You are not like all these other junkies here. And I was like, yes. I always knew it. I was special. And he said, you're much worse than any of them. Much worse than any of them. Your addiction is so deep. Your sin is so rotten. Your mindset is so warped that if it took one of these guys, because the program then was 4 months, if it, let's say, took one of these guys 4 months or 2 programs, 8 months to recover, you would need a minimum of 2 years just to start thinking right. But I would recommend you stay here for the rest of your life. Because the way you are now, what you told me when you come back, when you came in here, that if you go back to the streets, you're a dead man. I'm telling you, if you go back to those streets, you're a dead man. Guaranteed. You know, you that guy that if you had a GTR, right? You'd put all the extras, stage 9 on that car's motor, right? In terms of your life, if you were a GTR. You put stage, whatever the maximum stage is you can put on that car. And then you'd still rev it double the red line. And when you put stage 9 on a car and rev it double the red line, all right, what happens? How long does it last for the mechanics here? Explain to us. How long will that motor last? Okay, let me tell you. A top fuel dragster. You know a top fuel dragster? Who doesn't know what that is? All right, you know those long dragsters that they race in America that make all the noise, eh? Have you watched Street Outlaws?
Yeah, in the salt flats.
No, on a track, a straight track, quarter mile. Okay. So it looks like a go-kart, but it's long. It's like from here to him, right? Okay? And then the back is just an engine as big as this flipping place. So that's a V8 motor, and they run nitromethane on those things. And they supercharge them to the max. We looked yesterday, that's how I know. We looked it up yesterday, Saturday, me and another guy, all right? That thing, let me give you an idea. All right, if you've got a super bike, I like the S1000RR, right? Super bike, BMW, right? Too much actually again. My mind is straying. But if you take a super bike and you go through the gears, first, second to sixth, right? And you get to top speed, 300 k's an hour, right? And that dragster is standing at the start line, okay? And as you come across the start line at 300 already, that thing pulls away, okay? It's still going to beat you by 2 seconds over a quarter mile. It does a quarter mile in 3.8 to 3.9 seconds, all right? Its top speed, it goes from 0 to 585 kilometers an hour in 4 seconds, call it. Top speed, 585. Okay? It pushes out 11,000 horsepower. Think about that. We look at an M5 now, right? Or we look at, I don't know, a Ferrari or the new Hurricane or whatever you want. I don't know if you guys have seen this new one-off Lambo that they've built. My brother, it's unbelievable, this thing, okay? But you could say, on average, max horsepower, like even a Bugatti, 1,100 horsepower. And a Bugatti is the fastest car, top-end production that you get, right? And that thing does like 400 and something, right? Now think about, all right, let's say 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower. Now think about 11,000 horsepower in a body that weighs the same weight as that little camera there. Okay. But here's the payoff. The lifespan of a top fuel dragster is 4 minutes. Then they've got to rebuild that entire motor. 4 minutes.
Between races, they change the heads and everything.
Sometimes. So they race it as much as they can to get maximum performance. He's right though, the minute the performance drops by a millisecond, they rebuild that entire motor. And they throw away the other stuff. They don't keep it. They melt it down. Now, this is what I'm saying to you. If you want to live your life at 11,000 horsepower, you're only going to get a quarter mile or 4 minutes life out of it. You're going to be the fastest and the most explosive, but you're not going to get a long-term result. Your life's going to end early. And that's what he was trying to explain to me. And that's what I'm saying to you. You know what, brother? You've got to stop walking around pretending that you're something that you're not, trying to impress people. Because that's creating a lot of the conflict in your mind that's driving you to the drugs. Because to maintain that facade is very difficult. To walk around constantly with a mask on and then to lie your way out of what people can see behind the mask in order to retain that facade is a problem in your life. But it's time to start being honest. Now, I know you'll come to me and you'll say to me what I said to that pastor. Well, the truth is, and if I rip off the facade, then what I am is a drug addict. And I will never change, and I cannot change, and I cannot stop. So just let me go and be a drug addict, and that's what I will be. No, my friend. That is not what you are. The addiction is another mask that you're wearing to hide what you are and who you are. Because for some or other reason, you're embarrassed about who you are. Someone somewhere said something to you, maybe more than once, maybe just once, that has made you feel that you are not complete. And that you need to be something and pretend to be something in order to make this person or these people, whoever it is, it could be one person, you know, in a lot of ways, that was in my life, I can tell you now. I spent my life trying to, first of all, impress my mother, hoping that she would come back to me, all right? All right? And then when I realized that that was never going to happen and I was never going to be good enough in my mind for her, then I went the other route of becoming the absolute worst person I could be in order to try and embarrass her. That is one of the truths in my life that I figured out in my recovery walk. But when I realized that it's not about impressing or embarrassing people, it's about living my life in order for me to be happy and fulfilled. But then things change. And the quickest you can become happy and fulfilled, all right, is to find out who you are through what God made you to be. How do you honor God? By pretending to be something that you're not in front of God. You cannot do that. It's impossible. Because God does not read the behavior. He reads the contents of your heart. You understand? And this automatically, I always say it here, but this ties back into it to make it more real for you. All right? Created in His image and likeness, but if you can't understand, you know, I've got a friend, a shout out to Gary Lipchik. This guy is a very philosophical guy. Highly spiritual guy, right? And I'm happy to say that his spirituality has led him also to the Lord, right? But he said this to me one day. I was going through a crisis here. And I wanted to pack it in. Because unfortunately, you know what, everybody makes mistakes. And everybody does stupid shit. And the second I did that, the amount of judgment that came upon me was unbelievable, right? So I just thought, well, I'm going to throw it in. Because at the same time, you know, just prior to that, people were doing horrible things here. All right, to myself and my wife. Okay? And that led to pressure. And I'll tell you what led to the pressure as well. Let me tell you. Also trying to pretend to be something that I'm not. Trying to be a super pastor. Trying to be Captain Recovery. Trying to be this, like trying to be Jesus almost. Which is a massive burden to carry on yourself, because then when you do make mistakes that no one knows about, right? Like in your personal space, or you do something, then you carry that burden heavier, because you start thinking about what are people going to think, because this is the image you're presenting to the world. You understand? Anyway, I go through the spiritual crisis, right? Which culminates in a relapse in 2018, right? And everything that went with that. And trying to get myself right, mentally and spiritually, took me up until literally 2022, 4 years, to start rebuilding myself spiritually. Where I'm at a point where I don't care what people think, bro. I had some women fluking me on social media because I used the word bullshit. Pastor, she didn't swear. I said, no, you judge me for swearing, but next time I go to Hillbrow, you come with as well. Oh, no, I'm not called to that ministry. I said, that's called a cop-out. You understand? So, anyway, but I don't care. I don't care, bro. I don't care. People say to me, don't do that because people judge. I say, I don't care. Do you understand? I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to bring the word. I know I'm going through this spiritual crisis. And Gary put it in context for me. He said to me, listen here, bud, don't you understand something? You are doing the most important job in the world. I said, what do you mean? He says, can you not see that God, and when I say to you, he's not one of these bashala barala bashelele borololo bashalala barala bliksem Christians, okay? To impress the pastor. Oh, I've been touched by the Holy Spirit. I've been baptized. Let me run around. He's not one of those experts. Okay? One of those mental cases who aren't reading the scriptures properly, who are selling an experience. Christianity is not an experience, it's a lifestyle. Watch now when this one goes out. Because there's people that have built 100 million rand and dollar ministries selling a fake experience based on how much money you can give the church to get your blessing back tenfold. Flippin' liars. Oh. He says God has handpicked you to do what you do. And that's the most important job in the world. Not the fact that you work with addicts. That's maybe not the most important ministry in the world or the most important job. But the fact that you've been specifically chosen by God. Who else can claim that? Huh? You go to an interview at a company, you hope the CEO is even going to recognize you and notice you, right? Imagine now the creator, the CEO of the entire universe has handpicked you to do something. How can you not feel special? How can you not feel that you're worth something? How can you not feel important when God has specifically chosen you for a specific mission? It's like going to the Navy SEALs, bro. You know what I mean? You finish the Navy SEAL training, you go through everything. That's our addiction, that's our recovery. Everything we go through is the training, right? You get to the training, and then those commanders stand there and they say, right, now we're going to select the team that's going to go fetch Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. We want the best. You and you. Imagine what you feel. Imagine what they must feel like, but we want the best of the best, but. And you think, oh, well, I've got no chance. And you're sitting there with your rifle skimming, oh, it looks like I'm going back to, I don't know. You're working in some outpost in Alaska, you know, stopping bears from carrying cocaine across the Klondike Mountain or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Some cuck job, right? And you're sitting there, and those commanders are standing there, you know, like the American commanders. I love the way those oaks present themselves. I really do, eh? They present authority, they present pride, they present self-belief, but all things we as men should have, right? Discipline, self-discipline, loyalty, courage, right? And he looks at the oaks and he says, right, we're picking the team, and your name comes up. Now let me tell you, when Gary said that to me about God picking me, that's how I felt. Because that's the truth. Understand this, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, with a halfway house oaks that are here now, we've got 50 oaks sitting here, right? Excluding staff, right? 50, right? Now let's take it in context with I'll leave this conversation here after I've said this. I see oaks are getting bored, so I'm going to end it. Take it in context with United Nations says we've got approximately in the region of 5 million addicts on our streets and around our country now. All right? So 50 out of 5 million, right? Now you think what the chances are, all right, if you play lotto and you buy 50 tickets, what your chances are, and only 5 million other people buy tickets, what your chances are, statistically, of you winning the lotto. 50 tickets out of 5 million people, eh? One in? It's 0.000, it's 0 point with 5 zeros in front of it and a 1. Or a 5, or a 5. 0.00005%, I would guess. I haven't got the calculator here, all right? I do, but I don't feel like going into that whole thing. More or less, it's 50, it's 5 in a million. Or 1 in a million chance, 5 in a million chance. 5 in a million chance, right? Think about that. That's the chance you have that God has given you, a 5 in a million chance. Think about that. And then think about how special you are that you've got this opportunity to get your shit together. When right now there's millions of people out there that haven't been handpicked for this special mission. You've been handpicked for a special mission, bro. Other out there in the corner doesn't care. He's been handpicked to sleep in the sun. He's loving it. Handpicked for sun time sleeping. And he knows he's been handpicked because that's what he's been doing for the last 15 years. Smoking weed and sleeping in the sun. He's just continuing along the trajectory. Now what I want you to do, but I won't do it today, is I want to do Deuteronomy 28. I'll do it tomorrow morning.